First up is a newly discovered permanent buff called Love Protects. This condition grants you and your romanced companion +1 AC as long as you are within 5 meters of each other. To get this condition, you need to talk to the Dryad in the Circus of the Last Days called Zethino and agree to take the love test. This love test involves answering 3 questions about your romanced companion. If you answer all 3 questions correctly, at the end, the Dryad will bestow upon you her blessing, Love Protects. However, this is an extremely rare condition for 2 reasons. The first being that Orin can possibly be the Dryad in disguise. If this is the case, then you'll be unable to gain the condition. So you have to make sure to trigger Orin's disguises 2 times before heading to the Dryad. I chose the Gazette Journalist lens located near the gate to the south span of Worm's Crossing, and the Dying Stone Lord Thug at the beach, which you can find by going down the path near the very same gate. After triggering Orin to come out of her disguises twice, you can then talk to Zethino the Dryad without interruption. And then the big reason almost nobody found this condition is because at some point a patch broke the script for applying the condition, and as of patch 8, it is still broken. It was possible to get this condition in previous versions of the game, but if you want to gain this condition in patch 8, there is a mod that fixes the script called Really Shadowheart found in the mod manager. I was surprised that there was still a new buff to be found, and this one is definitely one of the most hidden. And next up is how to save Vanra without Hagsbane and get a secret cinematic. Vanra was kidnapped and consumed by Auntie Ethel in an attempt to turn her into a hag. However, thanks to Hagsbane, which can be acquired within Old Garlow's place, you can throw this at Auntie Ethel and she'll regurgitate Vanra, allowing her to safely escape. However, you can also save Vanra and yourself a trip to Old Garlow's by simply toggling on non-lethal attacks and then using a melee attack to finish off Auntie Ethel. This actually triggers a hidden cutscene where the narrator describes Auntie Ethel lying unconscious, her stomach bulging, and you have the option to cut Vanra out. If you select this option, you'll see and hear your character cutting Vanra out, and then dialogue begins with her. It's pretty short, with her crying for her mom and then running away, but still it's very interesting. You don't actually need Hagsbane in order to save her. And remember, if you don't defeat the hag in Act 1, you won't be able to save Vanra in Act 3. She'll already be at home with her mom, since Mayrina would have provided Auntie Ethel with her new hag. Also, a cool trick to know which hag is real when fighting Auntie Ethel in Act 3 is by inspecting the hags, and the one with the hag pregnancy condition is the real one. And next up is a message from this video's sponsor, Paradox. Age of Wonders 4 is a turn-based strategy RPG game where you build out your empire. You are faced with making choices that shape both your faction and the world, and your alignment can change towards evil or good depending on your decisions. And when making choices in dialogue, I was pleasantly surprised to see that some choices have chance involved. I tried to turn a captive into an undead minion and failed in front of my vassal, both losing out on a new minion and losing reputation with my vassal. 70% looked pretty good to me. Age of Wonders 4 also has combat mechanics similar to Baldur's Gate 3. When I saw Zone of Control on units, that immediately made me think of threatened and opportunity attacks, which opportunity attacks also exist when trying to exit an enemy's zone of control in Age of Wonders 4, so it's very similar. The turn-based combat felt familiar and fun, with new mechanics like flanking, giving you an edge against enemies when attacking them from behind. There's also resource management. Being a huge fan of strategy games involving base building, I love the idea of building up resource flows and properly allocating those resources to build out my empire. There's gold, food, production, all which are intuitive, but also resources like soul, imperium, and mana. I really like how soul is a faction-specific resource, which means other factions probably also have their own specific resources. Soul for my undead lichbringers is used for undead units and shadow spells. As you expand out your empire, you are faced with more choices, such as which zone to expand to next, and each zone offers you a choice of different resources, such as increasing food, production, or gold income. Another thing I really like about the game is that the graphics are quite nice. Coming from Baldur's Gate 3, I have a pretty high bar on graphics when it comes to games now. Age of Wonders 4 was a pleasant surprise to see how nice everything looks, and I definitely want to keep building out my empire and see what else there is to explore. If you want to give the game a try, Age of Wonders 4 is free to play only for the weekend of November 13th to 17th, so click the link in the pinned comment below and give it a try. And next up are incredibly rare Hyena dialogues. The first one that most players probably never spoke to is the one patrolling around the bloated hyenas. This is because if you get too close to the bloated hyena, dialogue with it begins. Instead, you need to use minor illusion to lure the patrolling hyena closer to you so you can speak to it. This hyena warns you to go away or it will make you new flesh, and you have the option to intimidate it, which ends dialogue without combat, or you can ask what becoming new flesh means. The hyena will respond with, "Feed the beast, feed the butcher, your flesh will grow inside us, better flesh, thinking flesh, give flesh now," which you can respond with attacking before the hyena does, or leave, which actually didn't start combat for me. If you start dialogue with it again though, it will respond with "hate you, not the butcher's kin," and then attack you. However, the most interesting hyena is the one that is attacking the Zhentarim at the cave. There are actually two of them there, and one of them will beckon you to come closer, and if you do, you'll trigger a passive dexterity check, and if you pass it, the hyena will say, "I was going to bite you, but you're a quick one." And then the other one actually has 5 different dialogue options depending on your race, which is insane considering how few people probably talk to this hyena. This hyena says hi and asks what you are, and you can answer with your specific race dialogue, and you'll get a unique answer depending on your race. If you are a human, elf, or half-elf, the hyena will call you soft meat. If you're a drow, he'll call you gray meat, which tastes like earth and pain. If you're a halfling, dwarf, or gnome, he'll call you short meat. And if you're a tiefling, you're cursed meat, and strange meat if you're Githyanki. You'll also be called tough meat if you're half orc or dragonborn, but only if you're actually that race. For some reason, the other races you can use disguise self on yourself and still get that race's dialogue, but for some reason you can't pretend to be a half orc or dragonborn and still get those dialogue options. And last, there is a deception check to convince the hyena that you are a god walking in mortal flesh. The hyena will respond that they follow Yenogu and he always makes them hungry. It's really hard to get this dialogue option because these hyenas are hostile by default, and you can only make them neutral by using your Illithid powers on Flind and then choosing the correct dialogue options. And next up is a secret interaction with Arcane Lock that makes it OP. Arcane Lock is probably one of the least used spells, but it has some really great utility. Not only does Arcane Lock prevent enemies from entering or leaving a room, but it also prevents NPCs from hearing or seeing what's happening on the other side of a door. For example, in the Githyanki Creche, you can battle right near a door and no Githyanki will hear the battle and come to assist. This is very helpful in almost every room of the Githyanki Creche, such as against Principal Healer Gustil Stornagos, and especially when facing Kithrak Therazine. You can also get extra value out of your Arcane Lock by using Minor Illusion to fill up a room with targets before locking it, and you can even take it a step further by placing a large area of effect spell inside of that room to damage them while they are trapped inside. I did this inside the Creche classroom by first casting Wall of Fire and then Arcane Lock with the Githyanki inside. This killed a large number of them, but for the few that didn't burn, you can cancel the lock, toss them into the fire like a loose branch of firewood escaping your fire pit, and then lock the door back up to let them cook. What's really great about Arcane Lock is that it doesn't require concentration, so you can have a single character pull this off, but you'll probably need a potion of haste since it costs an action. Many enemies will even stand near the door to melee attack it, and you can actually use Spirit Guardians to damage them through the door. It's kind of cheesy, but if you want to get an edge, this is one way to do it. Since it's completely free to unlock the door, you can also unlock it, cast a spell, and then lock it again if you have haste. But even if you're not into any of those strategies, Arcane Lock can be incredibly useful to prevent fights from spilling into new areas, introducing new enemies, and it could save your run in a very populated area like the Githyanki Creche. And next up is a hidden page of a journal that most players probably missed. Within the Wyrmsway, there are 5 pages scattered about detailing the journey of adventurers undergoing Baldur's trials. Each page is a recount of the adventurers' reactions to each trial, but even if you scoured the entire Wyrmsway, you would never find the 5th and final journal page. Even after succeeding all trials, this page would apparently be nowhere to be found. And that's because the only way to find the 5th and final log of the adventurer's journey is to fail Baldur's trials. This is because the adventurers that came before you also failed, and by failing, their corpses are reanimated and rise to fight you. After defeating the fallen champion that appears at the center of the Wyrmsway, you can loot his corpse and find the 5th and final page, which reads, "They're all dead. We were refused. I feel it calling. In death, I shall prove worthy of protecting this city." And next up is a secret way to solve the Chamber of Justice within the Wyrmsway. This trial involves choosing the correct punishment for the crime depicted on a series of paintings. Usually I just cast Remove Curse on the appropriate painting, but you can actually go after the judge and have all paintings revealed by doing so. To remove the judge, all you need to do is cast one of a number of spells that will successfully successfully get him to move outside of the range of the paintings. A spell like Turn Undead works great, but also Control Undead, Absorb Intellect, or Exhort the Risen, which comes from the Ring of Exalted Morrow that you can loot from the roof of Moonrise Towers. It's probably easier to remove the judge anyways if you haven't done the puzzle before, so you can see all of your options before placing a painting. And next up are random items that are actually OP. These items are pretty rare considering they are actually set dressing, but they have amazing uses. The first is the Wine Goblet. This item can cause you to get drunk, but without costing any action at all. This is amazing compared to regular sources of drunk, which all cost a bonus action. And you'd want to get drunk if you are playing a Way of the Drunken Monk. But for everyone else, you'd want to pick up the Cup of Water at least, which can be found next to Abdurak in the Shattered Sanctum. This Cup of Water costs no action to use, just like the Wine Goblet, and when used, it heals you for 1d4. This is great because it causes equipment to activate, such as Broodmother's Revenge, granting you an additional 1d6 poison damage to your attacks, and it also triggers the Whispering Promise Ring, giving you Bless, which is even better. There's also another item just like the Cup of Water called the Spoiled Treacle Tart, which heals you without costing an action, and even better is the Raspberry, which does the same and is probably the best out of all these options since so many can be found outside the Blighted Village. And next up is a hidden interaction with Reason's Grasp. These super hidden gloves can be found at the back of the cave the Zhentarim are hiding in around the Risen Road. You can find Reason's Grasp within a locked chest, and there is a trap in front of the chest too, so be careful. And Reason's Grasp grants you 15 temporary hit points if you cancel rage during combat, so you'd have to be a barbarian. Now, usually that's not what most barbarians choose to do, but it could potentially save you if you really need the 15 hit points. The hidden interaction with Reason's Grasp is that unlike most instances of gaining 15 temporary hit points, these will surprisingly disappear once you exit combat. Now, this is a pretty huge downside because otherwise you could strategically cancel your rage after attacking, knowing that the battle is almost over and you wanted those temporary hit points carrying over into the next battle. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, and these gloves aren't really that great anyway, so Reason's Grasp will probably most often be used to feed Gale. And next up is a secret interaction with the Hammergrim Mist Amulet. This amulet grants the wearer the ability to cast fog, but not any regular fog. It is actually a version of fog that doesn't require concentration. Now, this opens up new combinations such as applying fog to a large area by casting your own version of fog in addition to the amulet's fog, or even just keeping concentration on whatever spell you are already concentrating on. For example, you may want to combine Spirit Guardians with fog, or protection from evil and good with fog, and so on. The downside, of course, is that since you're not concentrating on the fog spellcast, you won't be able to cancel it at will. This could make the fog cast inconvenient if you want to cancel it at any point, but overall it's a pretty neat interaction that's easy to miss since the item doesn't say anything about it not requiring concentration. And you can find the Hammergrim Mist Amulet within the ruined house that the Absolute Convoy passes by, where the Harpers await in ambush. The amulet is located inside a locked chest on the collapsed upper floor in the corner. And next up is Bernard's other gift he can give you besides the story item Guiding Light. To get the other item Bernard can give you, you'll need to find the Patched Parchment. The Patched Parchment is torn and patched, and written on it is a small, nameless poem. The poem reads, "These empty sheets are all that's left of you, the last of the thoughtless gifts that you gave. I will hold on to them. It's all that I can do. I can't throw them away. I've never been that brave." And you can find the Patched Parchment on a desk on the 4th floor of the Arcane Tower. Now, the 4th floor is actually the top floor where Bernard is, so you'll actually need to have read the previous poems that will allow you to be in the Arcane Tower without Bernard trying to murder you. So after you've read that and talked to Bernard with the correct dialogue option to make him neutral, then you'll need to find the Patched Parchment on the desk and then go back to Bernard, because by reading this poem, you'll have unlocked a new dialogue option with Bernard, and by choosing this new option, Bernard will give you a potion of greater healing. And next up is a trader trick you can use to steal everything from a trader, guaranteed. Thanks to reliable talent, the lowest you can roll on an ability check is 10. Combine this with the fact that you can barter with a trader and split their stacks of gold into smaller piles, reducing their DC. You can effectively steal everything that they have through buying what they have and pickpocketing the gold. Now, since even critical failures will be re-rolled thanks to reliable talent, you don't even need to be a halfling to pull this off. You can even take this a step further and grab all traders and gather them in a single safe place, such as the Verge of Shadows and Activity, too, but you will need a character with enough strength to throw them and then use the waypoint once you've grabbed them, but it can save a lot of time by pickpocketing them all in a line instead of using a waypoint to get to each one. And next up is how to get guaranteed double potions and elixirs when crafting through alchemy. This is possible through the hireling Brinna for halfling luck, which lets you reroll any critical failures, combined with the following build. You'll want 2 levels of transmutation wizard for experimental alchemy, which allows you to brew 2 alchemical solutions instead of 1 when combining extracts if you succeed a difficulty class 15 medicine check. You'll then want 1 level in rogue to gain expertise in medicine, and then put your remaining levels into cleric. We want cleric for enhanceability, Owl's wisdom, which grants advantage on wisdom checks, and to then use all our feats to max out wisdom through ability improvement. Once Brinna has at least plus 13 to medicine checks and Owl's wisdom, she is virtually guaranteed to make double potions and elixirs every single time.